Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Dear listeners, I wish and welcome all of you with the Islamic greetings. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. May peace, blessings, and mercies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon all of you. Today we are starting our presentation with an important topic to take. That's why the scientific papers get rejected. In this talk, we will understand and we will try to read the minds of the editors as well as the reviewers, why our paper, when we submit to any journal, why it is getting rejected. We will listen, we will learn the important points which are to be considered while we are submitting our papers. And we will also understand what is in the minds of the people who are in the other hand while we are submitting our papers. That's the editors of the particular journals as well as the reviewers, which are actually checking the data, the presentation, as well as other things in our paper. So this is one of our important topics. And before this talk, in the last week, I have given you a talk that is how to write an high impact scientific research and review article. It has been taken well by a number of people. I got good comments and people were saying that it was a good talk, particularly for the beginners, so that they will understand how to write a high impact research and review process. So if among you, anyone has not seen this talk or gone through this talk, I suppose you should go through this talk, which is available on my YouTube channel, Dr. Khalid Hakim, because first of all, we need to understand how to write a research paper. So, and this talk, today's talk, is actually the second part of this talk, that when we are writing a paper, when we are submitting this paper, what are those important aspects which actually we are missing and which become the reason for the rejection of our paper. Because it is not only that you are writing a paper. Basically, the important point is that this paper which you have written, the data which you have presented, it should be acceptable. It should be taken up by the editors of the journal very well. It should be taken up by the reviewers very well, and the comments you receive, it should have some contribution on the in the field of science or particular area which you are dealing with. So let us discuss today's important topic, the rejection reasons, as well as how we can avoid these rejection of our research papers. Now, I was checking the memes, and you know that we are in the scientific communities, particularly in different aspects. There are a number of memes available. Internet memes are available, which are actually in a joking manner telling us the hardships which the research community is facing. One of the important hardships is to get our papers accepted. You have done the research, you have wonderfully written the paper. Now this paper from your desk to the desk of the world, means from the internet and in the renowned journal, it should be published. There are a number of aspects, there are a number of hurdles, there are a number of steps. As you see here, I was checking, it is a hilarious meme, in fact, that a scientist is trying to accept and get his paper published, but there are a number of hurdles and there are a number of things. And these hurdles and these, in a humorous way, is actually the journal editors as well as journal reviewers. Some reviewers are so tough that even after you give them the beautiful reason as well as the scientific evidences, they still have some issues with your paper. So this is a meme and we check it. That's why today's talk is important, so that we will understand what are those aspects which as a reviewer we need to understand while we are submitting our paper. Okay, in this slide, you may have seen one of the important lines. We regret to inform you that your paper has not been accepted. This is a line almost every researcher, I'm sure, almost every researcher who is in the business of publishing papers, this or similar type of lines he or she might have received one time, two times, three times, number of times. In fact, myself, I have now publication more than 135 in ISI journals. I have received this type of lines from the journals number of times, and this is heartbreaking. Sometimes we become shocked. It really hurts because you have a paper which you have worked for 3 years in the laboratory, then you make it a paper and you think it is good. Your supervisor has given the positive nod about it, but still it got rejected. Naturally, it's a shock, hurting. Sometimes we become furious, and finally, with the time, it all gets disappear. So this is one of the important things we need to understand. But one point I need to edit here, which I got from Vincent Calcagno, who is basically the French, one of the professors in French Institute of Agriculture Research. He once quoted, and I also, second to this thought, that rejection doesn't mean that your paper is having some more issues. Sometimes have, sometimes doesn't. But basically, sometimes, the journal has the compulsion to reject your paper because they have to decide. They are receiving the submissions, maybe hundreds of submissions, and they have to accept in 10 papers or 12 papers or 15 papers per volume. And the rejection chances, I will show you the data also, it's more. So they are forced to do the rejection even though your paper is good. So it doesn't mean if there is rejection, first of all, we should console our souls as well as ourselves that it is not the end of the story. Yes, the natural thing is that we get shocked. It's a hurtful, process. Sometimes we become furious. But if we think and if we check the reasons why they have rejected our, paper, similarly and slowly, we will all these, emotions, they will get disappear, and we will look with a positive, approach to recover our paper and make it good. So this is one of the important things we need to understand, that rejection process is very common, absolutely common in the research, arena. This is a question which I need to ask to all of you, and in fact myself also. How many rejections did you face before your first paper get accepted? It's a quite big question for those who are the beginners. But because I know I will directly assure myself before you that my first paper was rejected almost 10-12 times. So it was completely shocking situation that time. It was my PhD. I was not having the idea how to write, although my supervisors, they helped. Maybe my data was not out of the mark, or my interpretation was not out of the mark. Finally, it got accepted, alhamdulillah, good journal. But I'm telling you, I got the rejections of my first paper maybe 10 or 12 times. So it is quite obvious. And not only the beginners, but also those who are in this game for a longer time. In fact, those who have already published in Nature and Science and Lancet and other big journals, they sometimes also face this rejection before the paper gets accepted. And getting the paper accepted at first instance is a very, very rare case. If it is not a predatory journal, naturally all the journals, it is very rare chance. I must tell you, 99.99% chance is that if it is accepted even, they will not give acceptance without comments or without any minor corrections. So that's why I'm telling you that rejection process is a normal process. We need to first of all understand this thing. So if suppose you are submitting the paper and it is getting rejected, first of all, console yourself, that is quite normal. This is not a big deal. This is not something which you need to, be ashamed of. This is not something you need to, understand that it is not the end of the story. Okay. So that's why we need to first of all console ourselves that the rejection is a normal process. Now let us take this rejection process from the other perspective. Suppose now I am having the both jobs. As first, one side of a balance, if you see, I am the writer, I am the researcher, I am writing the paper. Likewise, you are doing the same thing. On the same side, on the other side of this balance, I am also the reviewer of number of journals. I'm also the editor of some of the journals. So let us take the story on the both sides. The first side, naturally, as a writer, as an author of the paper, as the researcher, is a heartbreaking news. But let us think about those who are reading our papers. And most of the times, reading the papers, like editors as well as reviewers, is a very time consuming job. And I will tell you that most of the times there is nothing is getting by the reviewer or the editor of doing this job. This is a sort of a thankless job. Now, there are some journals who have started giving some incentives to authors in terms of points, in terms of money, in terms of editorialship and other benefits. But more or less, reviewing a paper, although it's an honor, but it's a thankless job. You have to give your time. So that's why if we take it other ways, those persons who are reading your paper, and if your paper has naturally some important points, so that it shouldn't be accepted as such, because your paper might be having some direct impacts on the humanity as well as some other aspects which need not to be accepted if it is not the right result, if it is not the authentic result, if it is not the result which has followed the scientific temperament as well as scientific ethics. So this is the other story we need to also understand. And also, the rejection process also helps the author. Maybe you will take it otherwise, but I'm telling you in a very frank manner, most of the authors, when they get the papers rejected, they get some important points which they have already intentionally or unintentionally they have completely forget to incorporate in the paper. And reviewers as well as editors, they found that particular point in your paper which need to be incorporated, corrected, or somewhat edited before your paper being fully accepted in any research journal. So take it positive. The rejection process is quite normal, number one. Second, most of the times this rejection process, it also helps you as an author to become a good author. You need to understand that what others are taking your data. Okay, so it's very quite normal of rejection. Also, sometimes and most of the times, I must tell you, to my students, to myself also, this is helping us to become good author and good researcher. Now, as I told you that a paper being rejected, it doesn't mean always that the research is bad. Research might be good, but it might be insuffice, or it might not have that much of a caliber which need to be accepted as such, or it is not interpreted very well. So whenever there is rejection, first of all, we should not consider that our research is bad. Might be there are some lacunas, and lacunas are everywhere, and might be there are some points which we have not taken into consideration, and those points are important to take into consideration. And those points are actually, pointed out by some reviewers, because most of the reviewers, they do not have their own benefit. They are taking this paper very critically, and they are giving some good comments. So these are some of the points of consoling ourselves that first, the research paper rejection is a normal process, as well as review paper rejection is a normal process. Second, it is always helping the researchers to move ahead. It is always, a positive approach is take it positive and get the things back, whatever has been suggested to you by the respected, editor as well as reviewer of the particular journal. Now let us take the data, and this data is, naturally in my personal opinion also, and also I have discussed with my seniors, my colleagues, my 15 plus years journey of research. The probability of getting the paper rejected is, ranging from 40% to 90%. So can you imagine that you are doing the research and you think that the research is wonderfully carried out, the paper is wonderfully written in a nicely manner, but still the rejection process probability is increasing from 40% to 90%. So that's why I'm telling you, if we know that the process of rejection is quite common, so this becomes good for us. We console ourselves and we feel that it happens to everybody. Okay, so we do not need to get disappeared. And if at first you don't get exceed or succeed, then cool off, revise the paper, resubmit the paper again to same journal or to other journal. I will discuss the process in the coming slides. Okay, so whenever you are getting the paper rejected, keep calm and revise and resubmit the paper. This is the only story I must tell you. We need to understand, we need to learn, and this is the home going message, back home taking message, that the rejection process is very common. So the only thing what you have to do is, first of all, keep yourself calm, revise the paper and resubmit the paper. Now this is what the process what actually we are following. For those who are already submitting their papers, they know this process. This is called as the portable peer review process. It involves the 5 steps. The first step is that an author is actually selecting a journal, submitting an author to article to particular journal. This is the first step. Second is the journal editorial system. They takes this paper. Sometimes they give the number, we called it manuscript number to your paper, and they check all the things which need to be checked at the technical stage. So we have 2 types of review processes. The first process at the editorial board system or editorial managing system, they have first a review check. What things they are looking after, I will tell you that in the coming slides. So this is the second step. And if they found that everything you have followed, then they are checking the reviewers very much relevant to your topic. They check, they understand, yes, these are the reviewers. They invite the reviewers to assess your manuscript, to review your manuscript. And if the reviewer accepts, because this is most of cases a voluntary job, most of the cases they first of all invite. If they accept, yes, I will review this paper, then this paper comes to your, the online system. It goes that it is under review. So after the reviewers comment back, the comments goes to the editorial board, where the editorial board is assessing it again. So they are making the comments, they are cutting that part which is not necessary for you, and they are only selecting those questions which are coming from the reviewers or editors, and they are taking the decision whether your paper need to be accepted as such. It is accepted with the major comments, it is accepted with the minor comments. And finally, you are receiving the email from the journal board or journal wherever you have submitted your paper. And finally, you think the paper is good, you got the good comments, and there are something to revise, you revise the thing and you resubmit the paper. And this is the whole cycle which is followed normally by almost all of the scientific journals. And this is the process of reviewing. Now, after this, we understood the process. As I told you that rejection of the paper, it normally occurs at 2 stages. The first stage is called, we called it as rejection without peer review. So whenever we are submitting our paper, maybe the research paper or review paper, so it is first of all taken up by the editorial authorities. We call it the editorial managers. Every journal, they have some editorial managers. Sometimes editorial board members are there. Sometimes they have already their office and they have selected some of their employees, which we call them as the editorial managers. So before this paper is sent for the review, formal review, they themselves do it at, we call it in-house review. So in-house review, if they get some something wrong in your paper, then they send the paper back to you without review. They didn't send the paper to the external review. They directly sent the paper with a rejection. They say this paper is rejected because it is not following in our scope, or there is this issue or that issue. Or sometimes they found that this paper is good, but there are some issues. You do not have actually followed their format. They will tell you to follow this format and resubmit the paper back. So this is, we called it the peer review. And at this stage, I must tell you, my experience says 70% journals, they have this type of review very fast, and most of the journals, they send the paper very much, back to you, almost rejected. The reason being rejected, they says we already have lots and lots of papers, and this paper, your paper is not suited to your journal, or they already have good papers received, your paper is not having that much of caliber. So let us understand those points which become the reason for the rejection at this stage, means without peer review. What are those points on the basis of which the journal is sending you the paper back without sending this paper for the external review? So the point is, number one is that they'll check the content of the article, and if the article is not under their scope, within the scope of the journal, naturally they will send it back. For example, if it is a paper is dealing with the material science, and you have something with the zoology, or you have something with the botany, not mentioning something about the material science, so they will definitely send it back to you with rejection. They send that this is not falling in their scope. That's why if you check, almost every journal has on their website one important section, they says scope of the journal. So this scope of the journal thing is very important, it's very relevant. If it is not relevant, this is your paper is getting rejected. The second way is that non-conformity with the journal style, format, and guidelines. So almost every journal has a specific guideline to write the paper, specific format to make your paper, specific journal style to follow. And if everything is good with you, but you are not following their journal style, format, as well as guidelines, so they will send the paper back to you. Probably they will ask you to, get your manuscript done with good journal style, format, or guidelines, or sometimes if they don't bother, they reject your paper altogether. Similarly, important thing is that all the papers submitted, and good journals always they check your paper with the duplication check. We call it the similarity check or the plagiarism. If your paper is having plagiarism more than the acceptable level, and most of the journals they follow plagiarism acceptable level below 20%, and in case of review articles, it should be less than 10%. So if it is overlapping, similar work is already carried out by someone, so it is getting rejected on that basis. Also, some of the journals, they check the results of your paper. If the results are not novel, they are not significantly enough, that also lead to only an incremental advance in the field. So good journals, they definitely reject on that basis also. Sometimes article is too specialized, or sometimes the article is too deep or too superficial. So these are some of the points also which are becoming the reasons for your rejection without peer review. Similarly, limited interest to the journal target audience, because each journal has its target audience, and they are always following their system to only accept those articles which are interest to their journal particular audience. Similarly, sometimes the quality of research is so poor, results are interpreted in a very preliminary fashion, and they are speculative. Lack of clarity is there, consciousness is lack, presentation is not good. All these things are taken up at a first level by the journal editorial team, and they may reject your paper without peer review. And most of the cases, these good journals, they don't bother that you will submit them back, so they directly reject and be saying that we don't want your paper as such. But some journals, they are so liberal, they are so cordial, they says, okay, we will accept if you do this change. So that's why even though your research is good, even though it is formatted very well, if you don't have these things and you are not following these things, so your paper is getting back. And sometimes, unfortunately, some of the journals I have seen, they took this process even months, 3 months, 4 months, even for this basic process, because they have the high input of articles coming. So not only your paper is getting rejected, also it is consuming lots of your time, and your paper sometimes becomes old, your review becomes sometimes old. So that's why these things need to be taken into consideration very importantly. Otherwise, we have the issue, the paper will not get even the external review. But nowadays, I have seen some of the good journals, like from Elsevier as well as Springer. Some journals, they are so fast. Even they don't want to accept your paper, they will directly send you the rejection within days. This is also good. At least you get the rejection, and that rejection also within days, so that you may have alternative to submit your research paper somewhere else. So this is the first phase of rejection, which we need to understand, that this is happening without peer review. We call it the internal review is rejecting your paper, and these are the reasons why your paper is being rejected. One of the important points which I need to mention here, nowadays this is a good service. Some of good journals, some of the good publishers like Elsevier and Springer, I have seen, they have started a new system, AI-based system, artificial intelligence-based system. Sometimes you don't know whether your paper is following this the format and the scope of the journal or not. So you need not to check the paper, your paper with the particular journal one by one. Sometimes it becomes very cumbersome job, very laborious job, very tedious job. So nowadays, as I told you, Elsevier and Springer, I have seen, they have started with their services, and it is available online free of charge. They call it Journal Finder system. So if you put the journal finder, Elsevier, or similarly, you will find the Journal Finder, Springer, you will get a website where you have to put the title of your paper before submitting, title of your paper, as well as the abstract of your paper. So when you submit the abstract as well as title of your paper, you will see after the one click, you will get some suggestions from the website that your paper is matching this person with this journal from this publisher. So this has eased our job. So we at least get some idea, so where our paper is fitting, So this is very, I think, very wonderful services nowadays, free of cost. We can use the Google to check like this. Like I have here, the page is journalfinder.elsevier.com. Similarly, has the same services with the Springer. I think other publishers have also followed this rule. So you have to directly put the title of your paper, the abstract of your paper, and then you will get some suggestions also with the percentage of acceptance by this journal. Okay. How much the time normally they are taking. So this have a choice for you, and this will maximize your chances to get at least your paper to the external reviewers, because most of the cases internal reviewers, they reject your paper. They normally quote that it is out of the scope. Okay, now we will discuss those issues which are facing to your paper, which your paper is actually facing when your paper goes to the external review. Okay, it has crossed the first hurdle. The journal has taken it. They found no issue as such in the paper, and everything is okay. And they have sent your paper for the external review, and reviewers have accepted it for the review. And finally, you are getting some answer after the reviewers, external reviewers, we call it peer reviewers. They have got some comments for your paper. Sometimes the comments are very liberal, very nominal, and the editor-in-chief or editor of particular issue, or the guest editor, we have number of editors in a paper or a journal, they will sometimes give you acceptance with minor correction. Sometimes they will give you accepted with major correction. Sometimes they completely reject it on the basis of the harsh comments, the very, very strong comments from the reviewers. Let us see what are those reasons which normally are taken up by the reviewer. I myself being the reviewer, I also being the editor, whenever the paper is coming to me, these are the points which I am talking about before you, which normally we are taken. Myself is taken while considering whether this paper is good to be published or accepted or not. So those points before that, we will tell you, this is a graph before you. You will understand that what are basically the reasons, main reasons for rejection of your paper. You see that more than 70% papers are rejected after peer review because your study has done very, very poorly. The design of your study is very poor. Can you imagine 70% plus? So majority of the things which normally as a reviewer, external reviewer or an editor, which is concerned particularly with the paper, is that the study design is very poor. You have written very well, interpretation is very well, but the design of the particular study, the methodology of the particular study is not written very well. It is not clear. So 70% plus papers are getting rejected on the basis of poor design study or poor study design. Then we have results. So it has been seen more than 30% papers are getting rejected on the basis of results. The results, either they are very, very minute results, they are not somewhat, we can say, good results, they are not repetitive results, or they are results with, not interpreted very well. So more than 30% papers are getting rejected on the basis of poor result writing. Similarly, discussion. So it has been seen more than 20% papers are getting rejected on the basis of poor discussion. So although the number is not too much, but still most of the journals, they consider this thing, as well as the authors, the reviewers, the co-authors, which are actually the reviewers also. In sometimes they have to consider all these points. Sometimes journal, they themselves make the marking that you have to check this thing, this thing, this thing, and this point is having this much of percentage weightage, this is this much. So as I'm having the reviewership in number of journals, I'm just getting your sharing my experience before you, what actually journals are following. Sometimes they make us liberal to get the review points as much as you can. Sometimes they are themselves giving us the points. You have to look this point, this point, this point, and this point. But I'm telling you, based on the data available, 75% journals, more than 70% journals, they are getting rejected on the basis of poor study design. 30% journals, they are getting rejected on the basis of poor results writing. And 20% journals, they are getting rejected, the discussion is weak. And 10% or 15% journals are, papers are rejecting the journals are rejecting your paper on the basis of that the topic is not important. This is unimportant. This is not so much. Although the percentage is less, but this is one of the causes of the paper rejection. Now let us discuss those points which actually are taken into consideration by the reviewer. So here now we are entering into the brain of a reviewer. What is happening in the brain of a reviewer when he or she is taking up your paper? The first point, the rejection basis that the research topic isn't of great enough significance. You have given our paper, the paper is nicely written, the data is nicely interpreted, but as such, the topic you are giving is not of great importance. I must tell you, sometimes I myself has submitted some paper. It is a detail of 2 genotypes of, for example, rice or some plant, and I myself knows that this is not so much of great data, salinity, stress, and this and that thing. And they says that it is scientific data. We cannot, say it is not scientific data, but basically this is not of so much of enough significance, because already such type of data has been published, not now, 5 years, 10 years before. So your contribution, although you have done it in a different plant, you have a little bit different approach, but still it is not of having great enough significance. So sometimes the study is too narrow, okay, or sometimes do not have advance in the field. We are doing something, but it is not having so much of advancement in the field, or the manuscript is, it is you have a big data, but for the sake of increasing your publication, you have broken this big data into small data. This happens to a number of cases with my students also. For example, I have given them to do some physiological work, biochemical work, molecular work, and they say, sir, we want to have many publications. Let us publish the physiological and biochemical data in one paper and molecular data in another paper. But if we, break this research, as such, we are not getting some significant details. So the paper is getting rejected. Sometimes, I have one recent example. I told my student, this paper will only get accepted if you are putting all the details, the molecular details with the biochemical details, and make it a relevant paper, and that will have great importance. And he did the same, and finally, unfortunately, he got the publication in a good journal. So this is sometimes we are, in this, condition that we have to publish many papers from the same data. Then the good journals, they are not accepting it. They say this is just a superficial data, narrow study. It's not giving something good advancement and significance to your, scientific field. So this is first point, which I must tell you, it is in the mind of the reviewer, as myself being the reviewer also. So I am also taking this thing in consideration, whether overall the research is good, it is giving some great enough significance or not. Second point is that the research is over-ambitious. Now, this is opposite to the first point. Why? Because here, the author wants to pull all the information in the same paper. We have some data, we have some project, and you put all the information in the same paper. And paper becomes so much lengthy, it becomes so much, messy, that the results may be difficult to interpret. You have now given that table, you have now given the figure, and figure is so much overcrowded, the table is having so much data, we cannot get some interpretation. So this is opposite to the first case. Here, the first case, what you did, you try to bifurcate the big data into small one. Here you become too ambitious, you put all the data in the same file. So here, this is the case how you can improve your paper. You can cut those irrelevant information and which are not important, which are already known. You can only put those things in the paper which is having direct significance, and it will also show some improvement and your contribution to the science. So this is the second reason. So first reason was one, this is the opposite reason. Both the reasons are killing, both the reasons are not good, and the balanced way we need to keep it up. So good data, but significant data, not too much data, not too low data. Third point is that, which is becoming the cause for our rejection when it is taken up by the external reviewer, that is the clear hypothesis has not been established. So there is no clear point what actually you want to check, what you have checked. Unclear information, poorly formatted result you have done. There is not relevant the study field. So there is no clear hypothesis. Hypothesis means some question you have proposed to solve in this experiment or in this study. So sometimes if you carry out the extensive literature review in your paper, so you will get the actual hypothesis, and from that hypothesis you can interpret your result, you can interpret your discussion. So that's why clear hypothesis should be established before you start writing the paper, because you should have the question in the mind, you should have the issue in the mind, you should have the problem in the mind, which problem you have solved and you have tried to give the response. So this is the third point, which is becoming the base for the rejection. The fourth point is the manuscript is incomplete. Okay, so the paper might contain observations, but in a the full study is missing on the basis of observation only. On the basis of, you have not taken all the important work in the field into consideration. Just observation, not exact the number of the data, not exactly the repetition of the data, not exactly the statistical analysis of the data. There is many things which are missing in the paper and which are not making this complete story in your, because every paper is a complete story. It need to follow like you are following the serial or a story of a movie. Similarly, the research paper should start with a problem and ending with some solution, almost from your research. So if it is not completed, this becomes also the base for the rejection. Fifth point is there are flaws in the procedure. There are flaws in the presentation or as well as the analysis of the data. Now you have make a very good story, everything is okay, but the major flaw, for example, there is no clear control, because the scientists, they knows when they have to do the research there should be the control group, but you have forgotten the control group, or you give the information but the information is not clear. Similarly, the procedure of methodology, it is not good written. And also it is written in a way that nobody can repeat it. Basically, the work should be written in a manner that if suppose somebody wants to repeat it, it can repeat it without any flaw, without any issue. Similarly, lack of statistical valid analysis. Most of the data I have seen, which I have rejected myself, everything is okay, but for example, figures are there without statistical analysis. Data is mentioned in the table without any without any interpretation, without any test is followed, without any what we can say the replication is mentioned, how many replications are written. Sometimes inappropriate and unclear labeling of tables and figures are there. So these becomes confusions. You know that reviewer has a very precious time. Editors have a very precious time. If anything bothers him or her, they are completely rejecting your paper. So all these issues need to be taken into consideration. The sixth point is that flaws in the manuscript's argument as well as in the conclusion. Argument means discussion. For example, now you got some point and you are not discussing it very well. Your argument is not logical. You are not giving the logical argument. You are not discussing it with what has been published previously. There is no your perspective. There is no information about your own perspective. Also, the conclusion is not justified. You mentioned something, while as the conclusion is different, okay? And you are giving the conclusion on one basis, not the large portion of the literature. So these are some of the points which are becoming, reasons, one of the important reasons why your paper is getting rejected. Seventh important point, although sometimes, reviewers, they become very liberal on this issue, but most of the time, since now we know that the English is the language of the science nowadays. So language, how you have written the words, writing pattern, as well as spelling issues. These are some of the issues sometimes which are becoming, major points so that your paper is getting rejected. And almost every journal now, they are, if they are even accepting the paper, but they are giving the minor correction, and the correction is writing that your language or writing pattern is not good. You should go for the native speaker or the language editors. Here I can suggest you that naturally, whenever we are writing the paper, we think we are doing it very well. So please, sometimes you give your paper to someone else, your colleague, your senior, your supervisor, so that he will have also the look. Sometimes you forget to mention something, small silly mistakes are there in terms of language and writing. Also, there is a Grammarly software which is free of cost. You can download it as Word link free from the Grammarly.com. So this is also helping you to check the English. Sometimes you forget something, articles are not mentioned very well, the punctuation marks are there missing, sometimes spelling mistake is there. So these are also bothering the editors. Sometimes they become liberal. They says, okay, we'll accept it with this, but most of the times these small issues, are also taken into consideration for the rejection of your paper. So these are the 7 points which I have mentioned before you, which become the reason for rejecting your paper done by the external reviewer. Now let us discuss in some slides.
Excuse me, sir.
Can we have the questions later? If we,
okay,
we will finish our lecture. Yes, I can understand that we have the question. Naturally, the questions will come. So let me have just 10 minutes maximum, then I will take the questions. Thank you very much. Okay, I was telling you we will take some points what to do after rejection. Now, this is, I told you, rejection process is common. I have given you the in-house as well as external review processes, what points we are taking into consideration. Now, what is the point what to do after we get rejection? This is important point. Very important point, because we need to give them solution also. This is a whole system. I have taken it from one of the slides. This is a group in, I have mentioned them here in Egypt. They are doing very wonderful job, and they have supplied this information to me. So I have just given their reference here, SRGE. So they have mentioned a full table, and this is wonderfully mentioned. See, when we get the rejection letter from the editorial board, there are a number of steps. The first step is that we give up. And most of the junior colleagues, they give up. When they give up, so there is no chance of publication success. So first off important thing, you have to understand that rejection is a quite normal process, so please don't give up. When you don't give up, it means the positiveness is there. Now you will come to the second level, that you don't give up, you will work on this paper and you will try to improve it. Now, determination, you have to check the type of rejection. And when you see the letter coming from the journal, you will find that there are two types of rejections. One is conditional rejection, another is outright rejection. Conditional means the journal says that if you do, for example, this much of comments have been given by the reviewers, if you address those review comments very well, you improve your paper, you can resubmit your paper. We can reconsider your paper. This is called as conditional rejection. It's very, very common. And whenever you get comments, feel happy that the chances are there. In fact, the more chances are there to get your paper accepted. So suppose you found that this conditional rejection process, some people, they give up. They check the comments. Comments are too very much important. They are very, important comments. Sometimes they ask you to do the, what I can say, some experiments again. And you become, why to do this experiment? Why should I do the experiment? And you become, you give up. So when you give up, no success, no chance of publication success. Again, it is a waste. But now if you incorporate the relevant editorial and reviewer comments, you need to improve your manuscript. Finally, you will submit the paper again to the same journal or to the other journal, and the chances of getting this paper accepted, they are brighter, and there are reasonable chances that your publication will be success. Okay. Now, suppose there are some times your paper is getting so bad comments that your editor says, the journal letter says that we are rejecting, okay, please don't submit it back. This type of comments also sometimes will come. So you have to identify the reason for rejection. Sometimes it is not suitable for the journal, so naturally you have not to consider that journal again. Okay, if it is not suitable, so again incorporate the relevant editorial and reviewer comments. Okay, then you can submit it to the more appropriate and probably lower impact factor journal. Suppose you have tried with 10 impact factor journal and they give comments. Okay, they says it is not relevant, or they say it is relevant but the comments are too vast, too huge. You refer those comments, you try to respond those comments in the journal, in the paper itself, and then choose some low impact journal. So here again, the reasonable chances of publication is there. Okay. Sometimes there are fatal flaws. Fatal flaws means those important flaws are in the paper that even if you can do anything, the paper cannot be improved. So that times it is inappropriate to pursue the publication. I suppose that time either you have to do the research again, or you can directly dump that type of paper, because the fatal comments, there are some fatal comments which are completely against the publication. That time there is the chances of getting the publications are very, very low. So this is an important chart I have shown here. You can directly take a pic of this chart and see what type of rejection letter you are getting from the journal. Okay, now these are the 4 important things whenever you are getting the paper rejected. from the journal. Okay. Now 4 things are there. So whenever you want to, you are getting these type of 4 options from the journal, which is actually sort of a rejection of your paper. So the question is that many times the people say, should we appeal for the rejection? Appeal means should we go and ask the editor-in-chief or the editorial board that these comments were not good and they have not, because see, the reviewers as well as editors, they are also the human beings. So should we appeal? Because sometimes your paper is going to some reviewer which is opposite to you, because that's why number of journals, they have not started writing inside whenever you are submitting the paper, they says suggest some reviewers and suggest those which are opposed, means which you are thinking that if they send to these reviewers, they may oppose your paper based on the personal enmity, based on some other issues. So this is also one of the situations happening in the science, so to be frank enough. So but whenever you are appealing, the appealing is okay. I myself are appealing number of times, but your appeal should be logic, based on the science, based on the logic. It shouldn't be based on the emotions. Sometimes we can become emotional. I have given this years and this much of research, and this is something which is bad to me, and this reviewer may be bad. Always remember, these type of things, these type of appeals is not considered either by the journal, not by the editorial boards. Very important. This is not some legal court where you can file a petition. This is the choice of the journal. They accept, they'll not accept. So always, whenever you want to appeal, appealing is a chance. You can appeal, but the appeal should be on logic, not on the basis of emotion. Anyway, so after you get the rejection, letter, there are 4 options. Number 1, you can do the comments. You can, whatever has been told to you to do, you do it and resubmit to the same journal. This is one option. Second option is that you make the changes and submit to the different journal because you think it's not good, or maybe the comments are so harsh. Third is you don't do any change. You take this paper as such and you resubmit to some other journal. This is the third option. And final one is that you file the manuscript away and never resubmit it. So these are the 4 options with us, and I will take 5 minutes to you to explain all these processes before we end our talk and take your questions. Number the first one, as I told you, appeal the rejection. Yes, I told you, can you appeal the rejection? My answer is yes, because the journal should have but remember, the journal should have a publicly described policy for appealing. Sometimes journals, they don't mention it, but sometimes good journals, they mention that they have a policy that you can publicly appeal the editorial decisions. Okay, if there is no such option given by the journal, so that time your appeal is of no value. So, and always whenever you appeal about any rejection, the appeal should be on logic, not on the emotions. Okay. Second, whenever you appeal, so you outline your points to the editor without belittling reviewers or being argumentative. So always you can appeal with the good words, but don't put bad words against the reviewers, that reviewer is this wrong and that wrong. No, always appreciate whatever the reviewers have said, but politely you can mention and you can improve, and you can quote the science or scientific paper in favor of you. Sometimes appeals based on the scope of the journal or the perceived impact of your work are unlikely to succeed. So be also sure that whenever you appeal, it doesn't mean that the journal will consider. Sometimes they consider, sometimes they don't consider. Okay, now the first option, if you don't appeal as such, the first option is that you resubmit to the same journal. So naturally, this is most of the people, they do it. If the journal says you reject and resubmit, that time is the journal itself is encouraging you to resubmit. Most of the cases this is happening. Journal says at this time we got the bad review comments for you, we are rejecting, but we encourage you to address the comment and resubmit the paper. So this is good. I suggest you should respect this decision and try the same journal after improving it. But sometimes if the journal says we reject it, we send you the comment, but don't send it back. that times you should accept the decision from the journal, improve the journal, improve the paper, and resubmit it somewhere else. This is the first one. So resubmit to the same journal. The second option is that make changes and resubmit or submit to a different journal. So you will do the changes and finally you will submit to some other journal. Okay, so this is the third option. This is very common option. Most of the people, they took it because we are submitting a journal to a high impact journal. We get the comments. If they are rejecting, we are addressing the comment and choosing some low impact journal. And this is most of the common option taken up by the researchers. But while you are submitting your paper to some other journal, the cover letter should be mentioning very important information. The reference of the particular journal which you are now considering, you have to take the format of particular journal. Also, other journal specific details should be taken into consideration before you resubmit to the particular journal. Okay, these are very important points. Nowadays, there is another option. Some journals, they reject your paper, but they give you an offer of transfer in the same particular publication. For example, Elsevier, they say is rejected, but they give an option to transfer to some other journal. Okay, so that time this is just an offer. You will check the scope, you will check the details, you will check the impact. If it is matching with you, you like to resubmit there, then you can say okay, it goes transfer to the particular journal, and journal will contact you if they have some formatting errors or something to be done to your paper before the other journal send it for the another review. Okay, so this is the third type which you can do. Fourth is that another way, means I think this is the third one, make no changes and submit to another journal. And this is also happening to those researchers which either are new, or those researchers which are least interested in science. They want to submit their paper and submit their thesis as soon as possible. They have some other options in the life, but this is very easy also. They consider that okay, this journal has not accepted, maybe the other journal, they have some other rivals, and sometimes it works, but it is not a good idea. I must tell you that all the journals, particularly from one publisher, they have sometimes the same reviewers. So if your paper goes to the another journal and with the same reviewer, sometimes bad comments will come to your paper, and your paper submission process, it will take a long time, and the paper will get rejected again and again. So I must not tell you to follow this trend. If you have options, sometimes this is going to be good if the comments are not so much strong. Do you think? And if the comments are very minute, you can that time do whatever you want. But this is not as such a good option that you are submitting. So this is some of the people, they do like this thing. Sometimes this works, but majority of the time this is not working. Now the another option and the final option is that you think the paper with you has too much flaws and it got rejected many times. And your supervisor also says, no, it is not going to be published now anywhere. Okay. Now there are two options. One option is that either you send to some predatory journal, which I never recommend to you, because sending to your research to any predatory journal, what about the predatory journal? What are those? How they are looting you? I have mentioned that in my another talk. It's available on my YouTube channel, Dr. Khalid Hakim. You can visit that presentation to understand about the predatory journal. So never consider in your life the predatory journal, because the paper will be always in your thesis, or in your CV or in your thesis, and it will ruin your what I can say the impression. Because predatory journals are always, they are looting the science, they are doing some bad science, and they are actually creating issues for your academic as well as professional careers. So what we will do, if you have a paper and it is not going to be published, so you will never resubmit it. But there are some websites, for example, I have mentioned here Figshare, or there are Dryad. These are some of the websites which actually store your unpublished papers. So it has not been published, it has not been peer reviewed, but they make your paper on the basis of your name, as well as images, videos, figures, data sheets. They keep it there. Anyone can quote it, although it is not considered as publication, but it is also your contribution towards science, as well as those people who want to take benefit from it. So this is the final option. This can be taken only that time when you don't have any other option. So the penultimate, what I can say slide is that what you don't do, what you have not to do actually. First of all, rejection process is quite normal, so don't give up. Okay, number one, first of all, rejection is quite common, so don't give up. Number two, don't complain to the program chair or editor. Complaining is not an issue, okay, but complaint should be in a progressive manner, just like I told you, appealing manner. It shouldn't be, so somewhat we are writing in a, to some friend in a bad words or wrong words, because this is creating a bad impression for your personality as well as for your upcoming papers. Also, don't post the review comments online. Okay, don't comment the, post the review comments online, because keep it with you, whatever the review comments are there. Also write, and sometimes people write an angry letter. They think that we are sending this letter to our boyfriend and girlfriend and something like that. This is not going to be happen. This is science. This is something different. Also, don't discard the reviews. Sometimes you get the review points. Don't altogether forget that I don't have to take this review, and this is not good for me, and why should I do like this thing. Always try to improve your paper. I have seen my students, some of the students, they take the review process very well, and they have improved their paper, and I have checked after they have improved their paper, altogether the whole idea has improved. Okay, so always I suggest, whenever you get the comment, address those comments and resubmit the paper. Okay, so revising the paper. So divide the comments into two categories. Some are easy comments, some are difficult changes. So do the difficult changes first. This may take some time, especially if you need to repeat an experiment. Sometimes easy changes might be eliminated. Easy changes, they are very simple. And also you can consult with your co-authors on the changes. So sometimes you feel your co-authors will help you. Sometimes you need to change, in fact, in the paper. Sometimes you need a rebuttal. Rebuttal means you can argue, taken up the already published data, and you can quote the relevant papers that this thing which I am mentioning in discussion or results, this has been already done. So this is how you can revise the paper. And finally, the last slide is that how to get rid of this process of the hectic process of resubmission, and how to in fact deal with this rejection. These are some of the points. Number one, be a good academic citizen, because science is a language of good citizens, we can say. So always we should follow the ethics of science, know what you are doing. We should know whatever the research we are carrying out and how we are writing the papers. Keep tracking of what you have done. Everything should be with you. Sometimes the reviewers ask something and you have already forgotten in your lab, and back everything up. So whatever the information you have, the raw data, keep it with you as a backup. Don't lie. So fabrication is no way a chance in the research paper and publications. Don't cheat. Falsification should not be done in the research papers. Don't steal. Plagiarism is also a big issue. We should be deal with a big courage, as well as don't keep this in mind that I will do plagiarism and nobody is checking and seeing. No, this is a wrong notion. And finally, publish your discoveries. So new research is always getting appreciated everywhere. So thank you very much. And now I can end this talk here, and I will open this session for the questions. So all the questions are welcome. Now you can raise your hand, and you can open your mic, unmute yourself, and ask me the question.
Sir, can I ask?
Yeah, please go ahead, doctor.
Yeah. Sir, the question that I had was that there are sometimes, we get rejections on grounds which can be addressed Okay,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I have got a rejection for my paper. The questions were the comments that they gave, they were very, very simple and they were addressable, but they
Right.
had outrightly rejected.
Mhm.
So we did not have the option of resubmitting also. So,
So yes, I got your question, and this is I know these are the things which normally comes into existence. Basically, when the journal is giving you the comments and you can address and you can resubmit, that time the journal itself don't want your paper to get back. The reasons might be, I will tell you some of the reasons. One reason might be that already the journal has many papers with their editorial board, that they cannot take your paper as such. Although I know that you can comment, you can, but sometimes they make the criteria so high that even if it is a suppose little flaw, they are not taking your paper. They make it as an argument, or they make it as a basis for the rejection. Although I know that you can address them and you can resubmit them, but when they says you cannot resubmit, see, there are two ways. One is they says rejected, and they says rejected, just rejected. They don't say resubmit, don't resubmit. That time it means that the option is open. You can address the comment, you can resubmit it as such, and they will take this paper as a newly paper, not the previous. They don't consider it as a previous paper. They don't consider it that there was some review and you will get the comment. No, nothing at all. They will take it as a new paper, so they will send this paper to new reviewers. Might be the new reviewers will give new comments. It's a long process. Maybe 6 months or 5 months will be taken like that one. But if the journal is saying it, rejected and don't submit, that time is a direct option from the journal that you cannot submit. The reason might be their standard, they have make it so much high, or the papers they are getting, the inputs they are getting is too much, so that they are even making the rejection on the basis of small flaws. Okay. Third option is that they will say, they will directly tell you that this paper can be, you can resubmit it again. When they say resubmit it again, that time they may consider your review, comments, whatever you have given the addresses to the review comments, they may consider those parties. The problem lies here is that sometimes when the paper is getting rejected and they are not mentioning that you resubmit or not, we thought we will give the answer to these questions and we will submit it as it is our old paper. The same thing will be treated. They will directly take it to the next level, and they will not send it to the newer river. They will send to the same rivers with the comments. No, because this is not a guarantee. See, there are points. Number one, accepted as such, very rare. Accepted with major revision. This is the point where they are sending your paper back to the previous reviewers. Third is accepted with minor comments. That time again it is a choice whether editor himself check those points, or he or she will send it to the same reviewers. Okay. Fourth one is completely rejected. When they say rejected, it means if you want to do the changes, you have a choice that you can submit it back to the same journal, but there will be whole process again it will be checked by the editorial team there. Again they will invite for the other reviewers. Again it will be going through whole the review process. They won't consider that one time you have given it another. So we need to understand what type of letters we got from the editors, the what type of rejection we have. I think this is the answer to your question. Okay, Parvez Yusuf, you can unmute and you can ask.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Sir, we hope that you're fine. Actually, my question is regarding the plagiarism softwares among Turnitin, Copyscape, and maybe Grammarly Premium software. Which of the softwares is mostly being used by the researchers and the journals for checking the plagiarism?
Most of the cases, we have two types of softwares they are taken into consideration. One is authenticate. It is from I capital, authenticate, and we have Turnitin. So journalists, they either consider authenticate or Turnitin, both the softwares. Now you have some Plagscan and others, but majority of the journals, either they go for the authenticate or the Turnitin. So I have discussion with the Elsevier team, the whole Elsevier team, they are taking the authenticate into consideration. And I have discussion with the Springer team, and they are taking the Turnitin into consideration. So I suppose these are the two softwares which they are taking into consideration.
Sir, in that regard, is Copyscape equally good? I mean that if I check the plagiarism with the Copyscape premium account, will it be equally good to that of the Turnitin, or I must check with the Turnitin before sending the...
No. Good question. This is good question. Basically, every software has the limitations. Basically, all those free softwares, sometimes they are saying we have the premium. How they are doing, how they are working, we need to understand. How they are working, the procedure is that they have in their repository, they have papers, okay? Now on that repository, basis on that repository, or whatever they have the collection of papers, with those they are checking your papers, similarity of your papers, okay? Now authenticate and as well as this Turnitin, these are the big softwares. Big softwares in the means they are not easily available for an individual because they are institutional softwares and the cost is too much high. So their standard as well as their repository is too much huge. That's why the journals, they usually consider these two softwares. Sometimes a student sends me a paper and he has done it using Viper. Viper is free, okay? But in Viper, it shows 20%. When we check the same with the authenticate as well as Turnitin, the report shows 40% or 50%. So it means that the free softwares or those which are not commonly used, they do not have this much of strict, system, or their software is not so much of, their IA is not so much high, their artificial intelligence is not so much high AI, so that they may cover all these things. Number one. Number two, while itself, many journals, they consider it that either authenticate or Turnitin should be taken into consideration. Because if suppose they will send you that this paper is not, it is having high plagiarism or it is having high similarity, you can appeal, but they will consider only authenticate or they will consider the Turnitin. I have checked my students, they send with the other like you are mentioning, but they don't consider. They says our system as well as the system from, I'm talking about the majority of the publishers, the huge journals, like we have Springer, Elsevier and Wiley. All the three I have worked with them. We are working in a number of groups also. So there I have attended their workshop. So they either are taking the authenticate or they are taking the Turnitin software. So whenever you are submitting your paper, please consider all these both softwares, either authenticate or Turnitin. Or if you don't have this thing, you can send the paper to me. I will do it for you, free.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Welcome. So if we have any other, yes, Shabila Aziz can ask the question.
Assalamualaikum, brother.
Walaikum assalam.
Such a nice program. We are very much benefited with these things which we are not knowing.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I just want to know if we have published a paper way back, maybe 10 years back, and now we want to publish it again. So is it possible with the same paper, with the same everything? We are not changing anything.
No.
Or
No, it is not possible.
It's not possible. Can we change now the parameters, then again publish it? Because we will do again the research only by changing one or two parameters. So is it possible for that?
See,
that
the question you have asked is, whether we can publish our already published papers. The blunt answer is no, we cannot do it because it is coming in the plagiarism. Now we have different types of plagiarism. One is we call it self-plagiarism, like you are quoting your own paper, submitting as such. And if the paper is already available on internet or any other source, it will be counted, it will be checked. Not only that, but also there are some colleagues from your department, to be frank enough, if the journal is not doing it, your colleagues will do it. They will make it a big issue. And sometimes it is also costing one's job. Okay. There are people like doing this thing, and this is quite common. This is quite common. Even if the 10 years before, yeah, because 10 years before might be, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, carry on, sir.
Okay, what I'm saying is that, this is happening because as in last lecture, I told you there are a number of whistleblowers which can check your similarity. It's not only Turnitin and Authentate, or there are some other softwares, but also there are whistleblowers, maybe your colleague, maybe someone who want to compete with you, and he or she finds something very notorious and do some actions against you. So what I feel is that as such, you cannot publish the paper what has been published. So this is the blunt answer is no. But now you have given me the second option that you want to change some parameters and others. See, if you want to change the parameters, the interpretation, the result, the actual result, what was previously interpreted, that should be interpreted different way. The title of the research paper should not be the same. Even the wordings of the research paper should be different. So it is so difficult that you found to do the next job easier than to correct the old paper. Because correcting something is difficult than to do something as a new. Because whenever you want to, yes, you can take the benefit. I told you, I think last lecture also, we can take some data, little bit of data, and we can quote it. This has done by myself also, because I was doing the work on rice. I have worked on genotypes of rice available in the North India. So I have worked with 50 genotypes. That time, the data, the first paper, the data was dealing with the, shoot only. The next paper, the data was dealing with the root only. But whenever I quote the same methodology, I quote the same genotypes. I gave the description of all those genotypes, but when I quote the research later on, I quoted the research totally on the basis of different aspects. I says that the genotypes are same, the basic information is same, but here the interpretation is not from the shoot, the interpretation is from the root. So this way we can quote our previous paper in the upcoming paper. But as you says, only changing one or two parameters, keeping all such there, I think it may be not accepted by the good journal, impact factor journal, or if it is accepted by them, it may create the problems for the authors if they are in the academic field. Maybe later on it will be, but yes, you can choose some of the parameters and you can quote them in your upcoming papers. I think this is the answer to the question.
Thank you. Yes, sir. I got the answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So we have, I think, 12 people more here. So this is a deliberate chance to keep the number of participants low. The reason being that if the participants are more, we cannot address the questions more. So I try to give the answer to as possible questions we are getting. The second point is that after this lecture, we are keeping this open lecture on my YouTube channel, Khalid Hakim, Dr. Khalid Hakim. You can find the lectures there. And every week we are trying to take some, new aspects of the research, writing, procedures, whatever the issues are faced by the researchers, whether in writing, whether in reading, or something like that. Yeah, who's there, please?
Yes, I am Taha.
Bismillah. Ask. Go ahead.
So what if someone gets accidentally, he publishes his paper in a predatory journal? Can he again republish it in a good journal? Because predatory journal, I listened about the predatory journals.
Yes, you're right. And I think a very wonderful question you have asked. And suppose it is just like we have committed the sin, can we do the istighfar? Huh? Very good question. And see, unfortunate case with the predatory journal is that most of the predatory journals, they don't have this policy of retraction. In good journals, there is a possibility of retraction. Suppose you have submitted the paper, and after you found some flaws in the paper, so there is an option that you can retract the paper altogether, take it back. It will be written as retraction, then you can resubmit it somewhere else. This happens to one of my colleagues. I must tell you, I must admit it. The colleague sent me the paper and he said, wherever you want to publish it, please publish it. And that time I was not, knowing these predatory journals, and I was young, and he knows he has to get this paper anywhere. I published his paper in one of the journals that is predatory, quite obvious, I told you. Now afterwards, the colleague of mine, he published a paper in the good journal, and he sent the email to me that unfortunately I didn't connect you on time, but the paper has been published in predatory journal, but this paper is also accepted in a good journal, but please can you help me in retracting the paper from the predatory journal. I tried, believe me, they didn't answer. There was no answer from the predatory journal. There are almost 30 emails I have sent to them, number of times, number of ways, because I feel this is not a good way to do it, but no, not a single time they have answered. This is the problem with the predatory journal. So we give them the money, everything, because if they suppose get this thing done, they will take the papers back. Then who is going to pamper these predatory journals? So they are using your papers, the names who has already submitted the papers there, they use their names as well as papers to attract others, to falsify others, that yes, this person has already published a paper, why not you? We got this paper and this is genuine paper. Okay, so that time we were not knowing and we falsely came into this fray. But yes, you have an option. Whenever you want to retract the paper, you can keep the details with you, that you have sent the email to the journal, that you have what I can say, directly withdrawn the paper from the journal. Sometimes if you send the email to the journal that they want to withdraw, whether they will accept it or not. For my case, they didn't accept, but you can check. Other way is that you can send them the email, and in the email you will mention that I found this is predatory and this is this issue and this issue. I now consider it is rejected, and please withdraw the paper from my journal. Then afterwards you can submit the paper along with this information to the new journal which is not predatory. Hopefully with that manner they can accept, they can understand, yes, falsely you have done this issue, because you are clear, you are mentioning all these things from your side itself. So might be this is a possible way in which you can get your paper accepted, or at least considered by some good journal. This is my suggestion. So okay, I have some 2-3 minutes more. If suppose somebody wants to ask the question, you can ask me. If I don't find any questions, so then this note we can end our today's webinar. Inshallah, let us meet on next week. Let us take another important topic for the next week. So this presentation will be available on my YouTube channel. You can go through it. You can again revise if suppose something is missing. Thank you very much all. Fi amanillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.